Hi, and welcome to the first episode. I'm so glad you're here, although I also know that if the show feels relevant in your life, you may be going through something incredibly painful, confusing, and isolating. This podcast is for spouses and loved ones of people accused, indicted, convicted, or sentenced for white-collar crimes. It's for the woman whose spouse has just been arrested. It's for the wife sitting in the attorney's office trying to understand words she never imagined would apply to her family. It's for the mother trying to protect her children while her own nervous system is in survival mode. It's for the loved one who may have resources, access, attorneys, and people all around her, but still feels completely alone. And it's for the person who keeps wondering, where do I go with what's happening to me? Because everyone is focused on the case. The attorneys are focused on the case. The court is focused on the case. The media may be focused on the case. Your community may be focused on the case, and your family may be focused on the person who was charged. But what about you? What about the spouse? What about the children? What about the family members who didn't commit the crime but are still living through the consequences? That's what the show is about. You didn't commit the crime, but your life may still feel like it has been sentenced. And I want you to know from the very beginning that you are allowed to need support. You are allowed to be devastated. You are allowed to be angry. You are allowed to feel grief, fear, confusion, embarrassment, loyalty, resentment, love, and disbelief, sometimes all in the same hour. You are allowed to not know what to do next. And you are allowed to have a place where your experience matters too. Before we go further, I want to share a brief note that this podcast is for educational and supportive purposes only. It's not therapy, legal advice, or a substitute for working with your own attorney, therapist, or professional support team. My role here is to offer perspective, language, grounding, and support for people navigating a very specific kind of family crisis. I also want to introduce myself. I'm Lisa Mustard, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and a coach. I work with individuals, couples, and families navigating high-stakes personal and relational issues. But this work is not only professional for me, it's also pretty personal. I have lived through this experience as the daughter of a white-collar criminal, and I know what it feels like when a family's private life suddenly becomes tied to legal language, public judgment, secrecy, shame, and questions no one knows how to answer. And I know what it can feel like when people look at the person accused or convicted and then look at the whole family differently. And I know there is often a hidden circle of people around a white-collar crime. People who didn't commit the act, but who are deeply affected by the fallout. Spouses, children, parents, siblings, close friends, and very often they are expected to stay quiet, stay composed, and keep functioning. And that expectation can be crushing. And my personal experience is part of why I do this work, and my clinical training is the other part. As a licensed marriage and family therapist, I understand that a crisis like this doesn't happen to one person in isolation. It affects the entire family system. It changes communication, it changes trust, it changes identity, it changes parenting, it changes friendships, it changes money, it changes the future you thought you were building. And for the spouse or loved one, there is often a very specific kind of pain that's hard to explain to people who haven't lived it. Because you may be grieving someone who is still alive. You may be angry at someone you still love. You may be protecting children while privately falling apart. You may feel judged for staying, and you may feel judged for leaving. You may feel judged for not knowing yet what to do. And that is one of the reasons I wanted to create this space. Because most support around white-collar crime focuses on the person accused or convicted. Their legal strategy, their sentencing, their reputation, their future, their consequences. And yes, of course, those things matter, but they are not the whole story. There are people standing next to that person whose lives have also been upended, and those people need care too. This first episode is titled, You Didn't Commit the Crime, but You're Living the Sentence. And I picked this title because it names something many spouses and loved ones feel, but don't always feel allowed to say. You may feel like you're being punished for something you didn't do. You may lose friends. You may lose privacy. You may lose financial security. You may lose the future you imagined. You may lose the ability to walk into a room without wondering what people know, what they assume, or what they're saying. Even if no one says it directly, you may feel treated as guilty by association, and that can be incredibly lonely, especially for women who are used to being capable, women who are used to solving problems, women who know how to hire the right people, call the attorney, manage the calendar, protect the children, and keep the house running. From the outside, people may think, oh, she'll be fine. She has resources. She has access. She has attorneys. She has options. But resources do not erase trauma. Money does not erase shame. Access to attorneys does not mean you have emotional support. A beautiful home does not mean you feel safe inside of it. And being composed in public does not mean that you are okay in private. Now, that's an important distinction. You can be highly resourced and still be emotionally devastated. You can be intelligent, capable, and successful and still need help making sense of what just happened to your life. One of the strongest beliefs behind my work is this: the spouse or loved one is innocent and worthy of support. That may sound obvious, but in real life, it often isn't treated as obvious. People assume. They assume you knew. They assume you benefited. They assume you looked the other way. They assume you're standing by someone because you approve. They assume you're leaving because you're disloyal. They assume your grief is less valid because the person you love caused harm. And the truth is, people on the outside often want a simple story. They want a villain, they want a victim, they want a clean explanation. But families are rarely that simple. You may be holding many truths at once. You may believe your spouse is responsible for their choices, and you may also be heartbroken. You may feel compassion for people who were harmed. You may also feel terrified for your children. You may want accountability, and you may also want privacy. You may love the person. You may also feel betrayed by them. You may not know what you want yet. And that doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. And this is where support matters. Not support that tells you what to do. Not support that pushes you into a decision before you're ready. Not support that minimizes the harm done. And not support that makes your entire identity about someone else's crime. Real support helps you get steady enough to think clearly. It helps you separate what belongs to you from what doesn't. It helps you identify what you need today, not just what everyone else needs from you. It helps you parent from a calmer place. It helps you make decisions with more clarity and less panic. It helps you remember that your life is still yours, even if it doesn't feel that way right now. If your spouse or loved one has just been arrested, indicted, convicted, or sentenced, you may feel pressure to figure out everything immediately. Are you staying? Are you leaving? What are you telling the children? Who knows? Who can you trust? What happens financially? What happens socially? What happens to your name, your home, your future? And those questions are real, but you may not be able to answer all of them today. And trying to solve your entire future while you're in shock can make you feel even more overwhelmed. So I want to offer one small reframe. Your first job is not to solve the rest of your life. Your first job is to stabilize. That means getting enough support around you so that you can breathe, think, sleep, eat, parent, and make one decision at a time. Not all the decisions, one decision, then the next, and then the next. In the early stage of a crisis, steadiness matters more than certainty. You may want certainty. Of course you do. You may want someone to tell you exactly what to do. But often, the first step is not a dramatic life decision. The first step is creating enough emotional safety that you can hear yourself again. Because when your nervous system is flooded, everything feels urgent. Every text feels loaded. Every phone call feels frightening. Every conversation with your children feels impossible. Every public interaction feels exposing. And when you're in that state, you need grounding, not more pressure. So here is one practical step for this week. Choose one place where you can tell the truth without managing someone else's reaction. That might be a therapist, that might be a coach, that might be one trusted friend, that might be your private journal. But find one place where you don't have to perform. One place where you don't have to protect everyone else. One place where you don't have to explain the legal details perfectly. One place where you can say, I'm scared, I'm furious, I'm embarrassed. I don't know what I'm going to do. I still love him. I don't know if I can forgive this. I'm worried about my children. I feel like everyone is looking at me. I feel alone. You need somewhere for the truth to go, because when there is no safe place for the truth, it often turns into anxiety, numbness, resentment, panic, or isolation. And you already have enough to carry. So this podcast, The Other Sentence, we'll talk about the things people often don't know how to talk about. We'll talk about shame. We'll talk about children. We'll talk about marriage. We'll talk about anger. We'll talk about public judgment. We'll talk about what attorneys can help with and what they usually can't. We'll talk about staying, leaving, not knowing, rebuilding, and protecting your sense of self. We'll talk about what happens when the person you love becomes the person everyone else is talking about. And we'll do it without judgment. We'll do it with honesty, with care, and with respect for how complicated this really is, because you matter here. Before we close, I want to say this clearly. Needing support does not mean you are making yourself the victim. It does not mean you are excusing what happened. It doesn't mean you are ignoring accountability. It doesn't mean you are asking people to feel sorry for you. It means you are recognizing that the crisis has impacted you too, and you are allowed to get help for that. If this episode spoke to you and you are the spouse or loved one of someone facing a white-collar legal crisis, I invite you to book a private consultation call with me. My coaching support is designed to help you stabilize, think clearly, protect your well-being, and begin rebuilding your life with discretion, compassion, and clarity. We'll talk about what's happening, what support you need, and what rebuilding can look like from here. You deserve a place where your story can be held carefully. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.